Well, thank you guys so much for coming out to the NC chapter of National Association of EMS Physicians fall webinar. We've got a number of topics we're going to be talking about today. We encourage you to give us feedback. You can do that by chat. You can do that by email after the fact. We are recording today's session. It will be posted on our YouTube channel later in the week. I'd like to introduce Dr. Daryl Nelson, who chairs the protocol committee with North Carolina College of Emergency Physicians, and he's going to be going over the recent changes that have occurred with the protocol set. Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, sir. Let me share. Joseph, does that look good on your end?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. There's a lot to talk about. I'll try to make it as quick as possible to breeze through these. I wanted to start out with Joseph had given people an opportunity to ask questions before this webinar. So I wanted to go over just a few of them, and also we can get Dr. Winslow to weigh on some of these as their OEMS questions. Phone-based app for protocols was asked by several people. NCEP does not have any plans to do this. There are a number of available apps for our protocols. One in particular, I do not remember the gentleman's name, but he actually took our protocols as a model and developed an app. Several agencies in North Carolina have reached out to him personally to develop an app. It is a charge. It's not terribly expensive, but it's also not cheap. But there are some versions out there where you can actually put your protocols in a phone-based app. One question, why updates? Lots of work for agencies. Yes, I am all too familiar with the work that sometimes these encompass. We have tried to not do large updates for several years because it is a burden on agencies to update these, create new books and training. But many of our protocols had not been updated since 2017 or 2019. And so honestly, it was time for a look at every protocol. That's one of the reasons for the big update this year. I do not anticipate a big update from a protocol standpoint next year. And as we may find mistakes or if medicine changes, we will update, but I would expect very few protocol changes for this coming year. One general question that keeps coming up a lot, just remember medications, fluids, routes, and dosages are all up to the agency medical director. They're completely changeable at the local level. We give certain medicines just as reference, but that's all it is, just as a reference. There are folks who carry amiodarone, do not carry lidocaine. There's folks who carry procainamide. That is completely up to you at the local level. Anything in purple is completely modifiable at the local level. TXA, we did expand TXA across many of the protocols. Some recent studies allow for dosages up to 2 grams now based on some recent studies. This obviously is much easier. We can give a 2-gram dose up front over 10 minutes, and then the hospital not required to give an 8-hour infusion, which very often it's actually forgotten in the trauma base. So agencies that want to adopt that, reach out to your local trauma center, your TRAC. You need to do that in concert with the the trauma systems that you typically transport to. We also added an option for TXA into the OB emergencies, the dental and nose bleeding as well, with the caveat that for dental and nose bleeding, the agencies would develop a procedure and how to use topical TXA for that bleeding. Oxygen saturations were changed to a goal of 92 to 98%, and that's just based on recent AHA updated guidelines. Blood administration section was added to TB6 multiple trauma. And then there was a question about glucagon being potentially at the expanded scope level or at the AEMT level. Also was a question about Zofran, and I'll let Dr. Winslow weigh in on this. He's getting ready to go visit the medical board, one of his most favorite outings that he has. So I'll let Dr. Winslow weigh in on that. He and I did discuss some of these things over the last day or so.
Sorry, couldn't find my cursor there for a second to unmute. Yeah, thanks, Daryl. We're definitely looking at going back for the medical board. I've actually been talking a little bit also with the medical director for state mental health about, some of the obvious mental health challenges we've been facing. And they were actually also supportive, as well as the president of the the State Psychiatric Society, about our desire to get access to all antipsychotics as a class. So we're probably going to go back and try to work on that. Also, I'm definitely open to the glucagon, and I think it's for expanded scope. And Daryl, also you'd mentioned something about there's some questions about Zofran for expanded scope, and I'm open to that also.
Yeah, Zofran at the advanced level. So.
Yeah, thank you. And also TXA, some of the systems and some of the trauma systems are actually pushing more towards the 2-gram dose. Yes, Doug, I'll also look at nitrous oxide for EMTs. We're going to look at that also. Thanks. A lot of the systems are going for 2-gram doses of TXA, and there's actually some theoretical data that might have fewer adverse reactions with the 2-gram dose. Other things we've also just known in the protocols, if you can make sure everyone gives a 2-gram dose of the ANSEF for open fractures. And also for the TXA, some of the trauma systems have looked back and kind of audited the use of TXA in the pre-hospital zone. And we just want to make sure we're meeting criteria for that, because a lot of times it's given more than 3 hours out. And so we all know it has to be given within 3 hours of injury. And we also have to make sure they're, have, probably a blood pressure less than 90 and a non-compressible source of shock. Because we don't want to be given TXA if they're not in significant hemorrhagic shock or they're not within 3 hours of injury. Daryl, were those most of the things we talked about? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think that covers everything, with the addition of nitrous, which I had forgotten. But
yeah, and like I said, I'm more than happy to go to the medical board. I was going to probably put a call into this or start communicating with them fairly soon about that. But the state mental health and the president of the North Carolina Psychiatric Association, they're all very supportive of that, and they were a little confused about about some of the reasons given why we don't have access to that right now, if that makes any sense. So it was real nice talking to them about that, and they were also very aware of many of the challenges we're facing right now.
Thank you. That is great news on the antipsychotics. This came up a few times as well, and anyone that owned for OEMS, correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but OEMS requires either a written or electronic version of current protocols on all credentialed EMS vehicles. I think there was a question as to did you have to have it in writing, or could there be an electronic version? So I'm going to pause for just a second, and anyone on OEMS that wants to make sure that I'm speaking correctly on that.
And Daryl, this is Chuck. Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. All right, some other questions that come up about expanded scope, particularly with nitroglycerin and albuterol. I just want to make sure everyone, and to be honest with you, this is one of the corrections we made in the last update. At the EMR or EMT level, folks may give epi by IM injection, auto injector, unless draw up is approved by the medical director. And then you can also give albuterol to those with a current prescription unless the medical director allows administration to those without one. So if your local medical director says yes to expanded scope, given albuterol to those folks even without a current prescription, that is allowable under current protocols, and that also is the same for nitroglycerin. So, and I know there's been some confusion about that. Moving to the universal protocols. All protocols were touched, UP1 through UP19, and I realized that last year we had updated some of our behavioral health protocols, but I'll speak more specifically to that in just a second. The majority of changes were just some minor typos and cleaned up some pearls. We actually took some aspects of pearls out that may have been dated and just made sure that they were clear and up to date. We added page numbers to all protocols. Everything that had a reference to our IV or IO procedure, we have now changed and referenced those to UP6, which is the IV or IO access protocol. corrected any protocol that had Broslow-Luton language still there to pediatric resuscitation system, as we try not to be specific to any vendor. And again, in any protocol where there were oxygen saturation, that's been changed to 92 to 98% based on AHA guidelines. In addition to all those things, in UP1, we added language on universal screening of all patients and riders for weapons. I will tell you that across the state, the trauma centers are seeing a real uptick in patients being transported in ambulances who arrive in trauma bays that are armed. Not great, obviously, maybe with an altered patient who also is armed, but that is an uptick that we've seen across the state. In UP2, we added caveat for reverse triage and lightning strike victims. UP3, we updated the routes for Zofran. Again, remember, that's completely modifiable. If you don't see the route you want to give in the protocols, as long as it's accepted and Dr. Winslow approves it, you can change that at the local level. We did add a caveat about treating nausea with antiemetics, even if no one's vomiting. I have heard across the state, sometimes there's confusions with medics about not treating people who are really nauseated just because they're not actively vomiting, and it's also an anti-nausea. So we put a caveat for that. We changed cardiac considerations to age 35, where in many of our protocols it had 50 prior. UP4, we added some more caveats on altered mental status considerations, added AEIOU tips as a mnemonic to address the altered patient. UP5, again, cardiac considerations down to 35. We also added IV IO access to the unstable arm of that protocol. UP7, topical TXA for dental bleeding, and updated some guidance on the latest recommendations on how to care for a Voll's tooth. And UP9, similar to UP7, added a TXA for uncontrolled nose bleeding, sorry. UP10, we added some reference to all hazard precautions, continue with COVID-19, MERS, and monkeypox. UP11, we increased ketamine to 0.3 mg per kg with a max single dose of 30. Again, that's modifiable at the local level. UP12, we added choices for behavioral health crisis, agitation, and sedation. And UP19, you will see the title has been changed to hyperactive delirium with severe agitation. That is the current nomenclature recommended by the American College of Emergency Physicians and will supplant the old term excited delirium.
And Daryl, that's very important because the excited delirium has got lots of connotations with which lawyers will pay a very close attention to. So don't say excited delirium.
That's correct. Also changed the pearls to reference that same title. UP14, we added a preference for 2 IVs above the wrist and both in the left upper extremity, and that's come from stroke centers across our state. So it's very similar to the request for STEMI patients to have 2 IVs both in the left arm above the wrist if possible. UP16 changed the cardiac considerations again. UP17 and 18 changed the changed the references for excited delirium to hyperactive delirium with severe agitation. And UP19 changed the title of the protocol. We also, there's some language in some of the protocols that referenced EMS fellow. We know many of you do not have access to an EMS fellow. I know some people don't even know what that is, but we've changed that to make it medical director and assistant medical director, where EMS fellows really should be probably functioning as an assistant medical director in any regards. Adult medical, all were updated to some degree. Again, the majority was cleaning up typos and updating pearls, adding page numbers, UP6 IV access protocol, and then changed oxygen saturations where they appeared. For AM1, we added the name Duoneb to the nebulizer boxes for clarification. We have albuterol plus or minus ipratropium. That has been confusing for several years for many folks, so we just added the name Duoneb. We do try to stay away from trade names, but in this case, I think it's going to mitigate some of that confusion. We added the option for repeat dosing of IM epinephrine at the EMR EMT level for acute anaphylaxis, and we changed the flow of the arrow on the moderate severe arm for better clarity. AM2, we added patients may not respond to glucagon who are malnourished in the pearls. AM3, we added, if you're dealing with a patient who undergoes hemodialysis, the facility choice in most regards should be a facility that provides dialysis treatment. AM5, we remove reference to dopamine. Not many folks use dopamine anymore, and it is not one of the top vasopressors recommended in most guidelines these days. We took the reference away from the pearls as well as page 1, and then added the TXA caveats and parameters to pearls congruent with North Carolina Medical Board language. I think that may have been confusing in some of our prior versions. AM6, we clarified time last known well to be congruent with UP6 suspected stroke. Airway respiratory, they were all updated. Again, the majority of them were with these basic changes. AR1 and 2, we made the same changes. We have revised the difficult airway assessment mnemonics. And then we also added language for the North Carolina EMS airway form completed with use of any drug for airway management, not just RSI. AR3, we revised the difficult airway assessment mnemonics and also added the form. We emphasized the arrow from the ketamine arm to the RSI arm if hypoxic, hypotension, or dangerously combative condition were corrected and RSI is still needed. Changed ketamine in the pediatric requirement to contact a medical director and assistant medical director only, and took the language out that concerned the EMS fellow. Clarified the ketamine dosing the same as UP19, and then clarified ketamine points and airway form requirements as we did on AR1 and 2. AR4, very similar to AM1, we added the duonab language to make that less confusing, and also put the caveats for repeat IM dosing at the EMR, EMT level. Also, the albuterol, as we had discussed before, that is permissible if the medical director allows without a prescription, and then at diphenhydramine use is at the oral route only for EMT and EMR. AR5 and 6, we added some information to box to use other protocols. We added capnography requirements in red information boxes on page 1 and removed that from the pearls. We added some updates to the pediatric cricothyrotomy considerations and also clarified ketamine points and airway form requirements. AR7, similar, added duonab to that page, repeat dosing for IM epinephrine at the expanded scope level in the same language as we discussed in AR4 for epinephrine, albuterol, and diphenhydramine. AR8, we added general mechanical ventilator parameters, updated guidelines on ventilator rates based on age, added parameters for propofol use, added mechanical ventilation protocol UP11 to algorithm, added caveats and pearls regarding patients who have received paralytics, may not have obvious signs or symptoms of pain. AR5 and 6, same changes, added the capnography to the red information box, also updated pediatric cricothyrotomy, and clarified ketamine points and airway form requirements. AR7, similar to AM1 and AR1, added duonab to that language, repeat doses for epinephrine, and then the epinephrine albuterol diphenhydramine clarifications. Adult obstetrical, we did update the newly born protocol last year to AHA guidelines, but with some great input from some committee members, I believe that we were able to make it even a better flow this year. So we went ahead and updated it again this year. So AO1 to AO3 that should read have all been updated again. The majority of what we've discussed on the other protocols, with the exception that we updated APGAR references and placed those in those protocols for easy reference. We did add TXA to AO1 and 3 based on ACOG guidance. And basically that is, you would not start TXA after 3 hours of hemorrhage, just as we would in trauma. And again, AO2, we updated the flow from last year. I think it's actually better. We added some great informational boxes for easier reading and clarifying some of the movement through that protocol. We also added a blood glucose procedure and treatment for hypoglycemia should be at 2 Cs per kilogram in the neonate And then beyond that period, you can use the rule of 50, which appears in some of our other protocols. Special circumstances, the only one that we updated this year was the hospice protocol. There was some incorrect dosing on fentanyl. We simplified some of the arrows at the bottom, added a consultation with hospice nurse or provider arm, and then just correlated portacath and existing catheters to their procedure numbers. The adult cardiac section was updated last year. We did notice one mistake in A07, and we added irregular to the unstable defibrillation box, where it only had regular rhythm. In the unstable arm, we've added both stable and irregular. Otherwise, those remain as they did last year. Pediatric cardiac, they were updated last year as well. We did find one mistake in PC6, and we removed cardioversion from the stable arm and replaced it with expert consultation recommended for further medication management and or cardioversion procedure. Otherwise, it's the same as last year. Pediatric medical 1 through 8, all updated. Again, similar updates of what we've done to all the protocols. PM1, very much like AM1, I'm not going to read those off again, but we changed the DuoNeb, repeat dosing of epi, and the other guidance we'd given on expanded scope that I mentioned earlier. PM2 added the glucagon caveat for malnourished. PM3, very much like AM3, will remove the references to dopamine and change that to agency-specific vasopressor. Also added the same TXA caveats and parameters to the pearls. Toxic and environmental, all were updated. Again, basic changes are what we've done to all the protocols with typos and cleaning up pearls. TE1, we've emphasized to not attempt to identify or bring a snake to the hospital, as snake bites are based purely on symptoms and not actual what the snake actually is. We've also added a box that you can add a specific number to poison control. Many of our agencies do have access to toxicologists outside the North Carolina Poison Control, so that is an arm that you now can use to put your own local reference. We also added reporting requirements from animal bites to local health department or animal control, which is a North Carolina general statute. That only applies to folks who may not be transported by EMS, to remind folks that does need to be reported to your local health department. Otherwise, when a patient is transported to the hospital, it takes care of that reporting. TE2, again, added the poison control information box for a local resource. TE4, we added some information in the red information boxes detailing the difference between exertional and classic heat stroke, trying to make that more evident. Classic heat stroke is what we all get taught about, but that's what we rarely see. Most often, we're going to see exertional heat stroke. We added guidance on dunk tanks in North Carolina and caveats about most common victims being high school athletes in August that succumbed to heat stroke. TE5 added information box and safety boxes about calling for help with a marine bite or injury, added warm water box to jellyfish stings, also agency specific numbers for local toxicology resources. TE7, we clarified and corrected the pediatric maintenance rate formula. So these are kids who may need some IV fluids but don't need boluses, and that's done by weight. And so we've updated that guidance and actually given examples in a few different protocols to make it easy for medics and AMTs to calculate the maintenance dose. We also added repeat dosing for naloxone on page 1. TE8, again, agency-specific number for toxicology. Probably the biggest change in all these were TE8, weapons of mass destruction, where we added CDC, ASPR, ChemPack information to protocols where those and caches of medicine that are where they're located across the state. That was probably the biggest update to that protocol. Trauma and burn. So TB1, all the protocols were touched. TB1, 2, and 9 were all updated last year after UNC and Wake Forest Burn Center review. Again, the majority of changes are very similar to what we've talked about to this point. And we added procedure numbers where they appeared in the protocols. TB3, we did clarify and correct the pediatric maintenance rate formula and updated the fluid resuscitation strategy. TB4, we added information box on the importance of antibiotics with open fractures within 60 minutes, and that's for agencies who do carry filled antibiotics for open fractures. TB5, this also was quite a big update. We updated the pearls to the EPIC guidelines for head injury pertaining to avoiding hypoxia, hypotension, and avoiding hyperventilation, and added information on page 1 to avoid hyperventilation. TB6, we revised BP guidelines, added TXA caveats, added some notes on geriatric trauma, and again, updated the TXA caveats in the pearls to the North Carolina Medical Board and North Carolina OEMS language. And then TB9, we added a caveat concerning avoiding IM medication in burn patients because of the variability in absorption. Trauma and burn destinations. So the trauma and burn criteria have been completely revised based on the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma 2021 guidelines. They have been reviewed by the North Carolina Committee on Trauma as well. So that's a completely new and revised document. Policies, we added disposition number 10, EMS offload policy, to try to help agencies who are seeing increasing wall time due to emergency department overburden and also boarding on their end as well. So it gives you some information about EMTALA and how EMS and hospitals are supposed to work together, and actually gives you some legal issues about EMTALA that a lot of sometimes folks don't understand. It's meant to make sure that hospitals and EMS work together so that we can get EMS assets back into the community. We also revised transportation, air transportation number 1, and just made sure it was consistent with the new revised trauma and burns triage and destination protocol that's new this year. No procedures were updated this year, and that's really the main thing that will happen this October. The plan is to have every procedure completely updated, and probably adding additional procedures that have been missing for quite some time. That'll be the only major update I anticipate for October of 2023. If you find any mistakes, you can make fun of me, but please email me with those mistakes so that they can be corrected. There is my email, and please reach out with any questions, ideas for improvement, or ideas for additional protocols. It takes all of us to make this a great document, and I do appreciate the help of everyone who weighs in. Here's some special thanks. Here's an updated list of all our current authors and reviewers from NCEP.
Yeah, and I just want to, kind of chime in there too, Daryl. This is a huge amount of work, and Daryl does a massive amount of work on this, and he definitely, all the folks who contribute on the committee are extremely important, but Daryl can always use more help helping develop the protocols and procedures, and especially looking back through things, because having done this a long time ago, once you look at these protocols 4 or 5 times, you no longer can really see the mistakes very well. So no matter, just any additional help Daryl can get, anybody who wants to help, even just proofreading. Of course, I'm sure you take help just to help develop and make changes too, but even just proofreading is a huge thing. And one thing I feel really proud about in North Carolina is just how many wonderful experts we have and committed folks to EMS there are. So the more the merrier as far as helping Daryl look back to the document. I think that can't be said enough. In addition, notice Daryl mentioned the next change will be in October. And Chuck might want to correct me here if I got this wrong, but we're really trying to limit this to 1 major update a year to kind of cut down on the churn, because we know it's a lot of work for EMS systems to kind of have to take a new document and make changes to their local protocols. And those are the kind of main things I had to say. Do you have any comments regarding that, Daryl?
No, I agree. And thanks to all the authors on the protocols. And, these are all our members of NCEP who are voting members on the committee. But you don't have to be a voting member or a member of NCEP to be involved. I have a whole separate committee that folks have offered or volunteered to help, that when I have any sort of protocol change, I will send it out to the NCEP committee and also send it out to the review committee which is made up of some docs, some EMS administrators, and some street medics who are using these documents. And the more the merrier. If I can get more folks on those committees, the more eyes, the better.
Thank you, guys. We'll be monitoring the chat if you have questions, and we'll circle back as we break for each of the next sections. A reminder for those who've just come in, please go to the chat and introduce yourself. Give me your name and the agency you represent so we can build a roster afterwards. I believe, Daryl, you're going to send me your slides, and I'll be able to post them out with a follow-up email after this session proper.
Yes,
So,
sir, I will.
Very good. I'd like to recognize Chuck Lewis from the State Office of EMS.
Thank you, Joseph. I'll be real brief. Just a couple of items of interest. First, the staffing waiver, General Statute 131E-158. Quick reminder, that's a waiver that we put in place back early on in the pandemic to allow EMS agencies to utilize one credentialed EMS professional responsible for the care of the patient, and then an unlicensed or an uncredentialed individual to drive the vehicle. Early on, we put that in place to, be able to help EMS agencies keep trucks on the road when they had folks that were out sick. Over the course of 2 years, the landscape has changed, and now that waiver is still in place, but folks are using it for a completely different purpose in that they're having difficulty hiring. We did receive permission through the budget reconciliation bill at the close of the General Assembly session a couple of months ago for us to be able to leave that in place if certain circumstances were in place. We found, continued public emergency, public health emergency, those kinds of things. That waiver does still stand. It is in place through the end of, right now it's scheduled to sunset at the end of the declared national public health emergency, which I think is January 11, January 18, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we have heard some rumblings that declared emergency will stay in place through the spring. We don't have a date. So long story short, the staffing waiver is still in place. We encourage EMS agencies that need to utilize that to keep trucks on the road to let us know that they want to use that and to keep that in place as much as you need. We fully support you and whatever you need to do to be able to serve the citizens of your communities. The other thing that I wanted to make mention of, we are starting down the rabbit hole of doing some rule revisions. The majority of these are just clean up things, closing a couple of loopholes. Don't think there's going to be anything in there that's going to be extremely controversial. We are just on the beginning stages of that, identifying some rules that we want to be rewriting and building out some language for changes. So those are the two big things with OEMS. And like Joseph said, if you'll leave questions in the comments or questions in the chat, we'll try to answer those as appropriate.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm going to roll over to Dr. Joey Grover.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joey Grover. I'm the president of the North Carolina chapter of NAEMSP. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I wanted to actually get a quick update from our nationals. So we are lucky to actually have Dr. Jose Cabañas, who's the president-elect of NAEMSP on the national side. We were hoping to get a quick update for what's going on the big scale national NAEMSP side. So thanks so much, Jose, for joining us.
Good morning. Hey, guys, how you all doing? Can you hear me? I've had computer issues. Well, it's good to see you all. Just briefly, as you all know, we're getting excited for our annual meeting in Tampa. It's coming up pretty soon. So we're expecting this to be probably our biggest conference in attendance in MSP ever. So lots of great pre-cons, lots of great programs. So I'm expecting all of you, to attend and see you all there. It's going to be a fantastic meeting. On the other items nationally, we're still keep working on some of the advocacy initiatives around some of the items that we're trying to push forward on the advocacy side, which is EMS physician compensation or quality bills, things that we're kind of still working on. And one thing that you may have noticed is that MSP signed on into a letter that ASAP sent to President Biden related to the ongoing challenging conditions that all of us see every day in our emergency departments with regards to staffing, burnout, volumes, capacity issues, and so forth. So we're involved in some of those discussions with supporting ASAP, who's taking the lead on that. But it's also that's something that MSP is sort of also kind of working through. That's kind of the main ticket items. It's going to be a great annual meeting. So, looking forward to seeing all of you there. And that's pretty much it for me. Any questions or comments? And this is a meeting that I'll be taking over as president from Mike Levy. So we're working on some transition plans there, which is are very interesting. And I appreciate all of you, not all of you, but some of you who have actually agreed to chair a committee in some way, shape, or form during my term. So there's several of you here in this call. So I appreciate your kind support and to the team and the work for the association. So thank you, guys.
Joey, back to you.
Excellent. And so for the next topic for presentation, we have Dr. Diane Miller, who's going to do a quick introduction on a new program for the North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I want to introduce you to First Sergeant Sean Johnson. He is our EMS Operations Chief for the North Carolina Highway Patrol System. For those of you that are not aware, this is the 101st County system in North Carolina. We are currently operating at a BLS non-transport level, but hopefully we'll be able to expand beyond that over time. First Sergeant Johnson's going to talk with you all about an exciting new program that is in the process of launching, which is providing all of our troopers with access to AEDs. So First Sergeant Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share this screen with you right quick. Let's make sure we can get that over. Dr. Miller, can y'all see that?
Sean, are you able to go to the presenter mode?
Can y'all see that, Dr. Miller?
Yes, are you able to hit the display settings? If not, we'll just look at it in this mode.
Can you not see it?
We can just do this mode, it's fine.
Okay. All right. All right. So the background of what we're doing is there are more than 356,000 out-of-hospital cardiac arrests in the United States annually. The survival to discharge is roughly around 10%. 15.1% of the out-of-hospital cardiac arrests are in public areas. And layperson is, you should use a AED in 9.5% of those cases in North Carolina just in 2020. So one of the things about this AED program was, and one of the big factors here is the assaults on law enforcement is ever increasing. And one of the things is we do not know when if it's peaked, when it's going to level out, and then of course decrease. So with the assaults on law enforcement, you see the wave going across the United States back and forth. And I hate to say this, I just think it's more of a matter of when it's going to happen. And I hope that that's wrong. But when something does happen to one of our officers, I want them to be equipped themselves or their partners to be able to render aid to our own troopers, allied agencies. And you see these firefighters and EMS people being struck on scenes, different things happen. So with that, I want to be able to provide the right care to everyone and to administer high quality CPR and shocks via AED as soon as possible. One of the other things too is these troopers. So we got roughly over 1,600 troopers right now in 100 counties across the state. And one of the things that our troopers commonly come in contact with is they'll be going down the road, just doing preventive patrol and go around a corner and there's a car that ran off the road and hit a tree, and they start looking into it and find somebody in cardiac arrest, or later have an episode and go into cardiac arrest. But whatever it may be, I want our troopers to be able to render aid and increase the survival rates for our members and the constituents of this state. We've actually had some troopers in the past that have had medical episodes. We've lost 2 of them back in 2018 due to cardiac arrest. And if the spouses would have knew an AED was sitting out there in the trunk of that car and would have better have had access to that, what difference would it have made? And I feel like the outcome of that would have possibly been a lot better than where we're at now. We had a trooper earlier this year to go in cardiac arrest. They did CPR on him for over 20 minutes and shocked him 9 times. And he is with us today. He's back full duty and doing very well. So this was the big drive with this stuff here. Troopers receive regular training every year. So I've got all of our specialized and general instructors have to go through CPR and AED training annually to stay within a certain requirement of training and standards. The other general population of the patrol, the majority of the troopers, and then all of our civilian personnel go through AED and CPR training every 2 years. So starting the beginning of next year, January 1st through March 31st, every trooper and civilian that works for the Highway Patrol will go through CPR and AED training. No, we have no prior data on troopers assisting lay people or EMS with out of hospital cardiac arrest at this time. So one of the things with this and the uses is going to be definitely to capture this type of data. We want to increase access to with the AEDs, and with a footprint of 1,600 troopers at the moment that and those AEDs have been delivered statewide. The training has begun. We got 3 troops. Troop G, Troop F, and then Troop D David are fully equipped. And there's about 5 troopers in each one of those districts that missed the training due to being sick or on vacation. But those 3 troops are fully deployed. The other remaining troops are starting training today and will be done by the 18th of December. We want to be able to increase the survival to hospital discharge and increase the neurologically intact survival so that these people are getting true saves out of this. I purchased 1,732 AEDs. That was not grant funded. And about 90 of those AEDs out of that 1,732 are in reserve. We're getting ready to run 2 large highway patrol schools at the beginning of the year, and those extra will be used to fill those positions once the troopers or the cadets graduate the patrol school. As I said before, by December the 18th, all troops, Troop A through, which is at the coast, all the way to the mountains, which is in Troop G George and Troop F Frank, the entire state will be equipped with these AEDs, with the exception of members from the training academy, headquarters, and then Troop I. The only thing I'm waiting on there is some fixed asset numbers to come in from the state. And once we get those inventoried, training will commence and hopefully actually be done with those members in December before we go into Christmas break. And what we're doing with these is we're having all the troopers come in-house for about 2 hours, and they're unboxing their AED, putting it together. The instructors are explaining the AED, how it works, what it shocks, what it does not, why it does shock, and why it does not at times. And we're putting them through hands-on training with the CPR help skins, which can mimic shockable rhythms and make them do several scenarios. And then once the trooper leaves that training session, they are duty ready, and the AED is being kept inside of their trunk. This right here is the AED we went with. It's made by Zoll. It's the AED Plus with the D pads, and it gives true feedback. There's a lot of reasons we went with this one. The hot and cold temperatures that we see in the state When they designed these things, that was a big factor in the UL testing and things they did, the altitude testing. We have all those factors here in North Carolina. The cover comes off and puts the head in the held tit lift position. We got the true feedback. The batteries on here last 5 years, and so does the pads. And that was a big cost saving factor when we looked at this. When an AED is deployed, the trooper's going to have to fill out an HP 125 within 48 hours. And when they're done with this report, the sergeants out in the field will actually download the data from the AED before that event, and it will be attached with this report, and they will email it into our Highway Patrol EMS system, where myself and our physicians will QA those reports, and then that way we can track and have statistical data. Here's a picture of the HP 125, and it captures the data that we're actually trying to seek. And we'll keep this stuff here. And like I said, we'll be able to pull statistical data and be able to justify this program. So when possible, if one of the things y'all can pass down, I don't know which counties in this state is utilizing the Zoll AED Plus, but if you're on this meeting and you're one of those counties and a trooper uses that AED, please replace that set of pads 1 for 1, and that will help us augment the usage of these pads. And other thing from involvement of EMS is trying to find outcome information of these patients so that we can know if we have a true save and the patient recovered in the hospital and was able to go home and continue on with life as normal as possible. And we'll be reaching out to EMS units across the state to try to gather that information so that we know the true outcomes on that.
Thank you, Sean. So this was a huge amount of work, and this was all the work done by First Sergeant Johnson. He was able to secure several $1 million in funding to provide these AEDs to all of our members. And so I think this is going to be a really promising program. I did see a couple questions in the chat, one of which I think he already answered in terms of downloading the data and evaluating each individual use. So we will be doing that. In terms of adding troopers to Pulse Point, so, you know, just like with EMS, the Highway Patrol is really stretched thin in terms of troopers on the road. And so we don't, at this time, want to have troopers chasing cardiac arrest calls, but we do want them to be prepared to assist if there is an emergency that's within a reasonable distance from them. So this time we won't necessarily be connecting them with Pulse Point or adding them to dispatch, but if they are able to assist and they're a reasonable distance, then they will do that. We actually just received a notice from one of our supervisors a few days ago. And one of our troopers was responding to a wreck scene, and there was somebody else that happened to be on scene, a civilian who the trooper recognized was in a medical emergency, and the man actually went into cardiac arrest. So the trooper, in addition to one other first responder on the scene, were able to extract the man in cardiac arrest out of that vehicle and to initiate care until EMS could take over. I don't know the outcome of that patient's care at this point, but it just goes to show that oftentimes, especially in the more rural areas, our troopers are oftentimes the first responder on scene. And so if they're able to utilize an AED and initiate CPR, I think this is really going to be a huge help. Just looking at the questions. So race cars is not currently involved with this. This is something that we can definitely reach out and coordinate. We're still in the process of kind of developing what we're going to do with this data. But the biggest thing was procuring the money for these AEDs, ordering them, and then getting proper training out there. And then, yes, it would be great if local EMS systems. So what we'll do is when we do receive the HP 125 from our troopers after a use, we'll reach out to the local EMS system and try to coordinate getting outcome data for those patients. And that'll help us to show kind of the number needed to treat and the utility of having AEDs in each of our troopers' vehicles. I think that was all of the questions. Does anyone else have any questions on this program or any comments on it?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for Sergeant Johnson and Dr. Miller. That's really an exciting program. If there are any further questions, feel free to shoot emails out as well after this session. So the next topic that we are going to be hitting is a project that I'm particularly excited about as well, that relates to something that Dr. Cabañas mentioned on the national level. So currently, as we've talked about before, there is little data about proper compensation for EMS medical directors on a both national level as well as on a local level. And so one of the things that I've been working on in combination with our Office of EMS is really to answer the question of what is appropriate compensation to serve as a North Carolina medical director. There's no literature on it. There really is no data to support what is the current, quote unquote, market rate for EMS medical director. And so the real question now is going to be, how do we gather that data? We in North Carolina are also somewhat unique in that we already have a system in place where we have one North Carolina medical director per EMS system with varying population size and EMS system sizes. And so the good news is we have a somewhat homogeneous base data group in terms of the one medical director per county system that we can actually start to gather this data on. So what are we doing? I've obtained IRB exemption status for a study to look at creating a market analysis linking EMS system size and EMS call volume size and population size to medical director compensation. So all of you should have received a survey through Continuum, which includes a link. We'll be providing that again through the chat here. The question I've received from some providers relates to medical direction for outside non-county EMS systems. Like, how can we start looking at a proper compensation for critical care transports or alternative practice settings? I see that as the second iteration of this survey. The first survey, I think, is to compare apples to apples, right, with regards to county EMS medical directors. I think a further follow-up study could look at critical care compensation and then as well some of these alternative practice settings. But this survey is not intended to capture those populations. So once again, what's my main goal? I'm not going to be looking at a specific system. I do not ask for your system name or which county you're in. I'm simply looking at the main variables associated with your EMS system related to EMS system size, volume, and associated compensation. And the more specific you are with regards to that compensation amount, the better this market analysis will be to associate work with compensation. So this is the survey. I'm going to be putting it in the chat as well. If you are an EMS medical director and you have not completed the survey, I once again would just really ask you to do it. It's a short survey. It'll take you, less than 5 minutes to complete. And once again, it'll be a really valuable piece of data for capturing our total population size. So what else are we looking at? So interestingly, the last topic that I wanted to cover is a little bit on the national side. So Jose mentioned a few things, but as I mentioned before, I currently serve as the president of the North Carolina chapter. And one of my goals is to try to entice you all to become members of NAEMSP. There's a lot that we offer by being members of NAEMSP, right? First of all, it's a huge organization, right? We have over 1,500 paramedics, nurses, system administrators, educators, research, and then of course, medical directors. What else do we do? Well, interestingly, we obviously have our main conference, but we also serve as the providing a main peer-reviewed journal, which is actually the primary peer-reviewed journal for multiple organizations in addition to NMSP. So NREMT, NAEMT, NAEMSP, NAEMSP. I mean, all of these pre-hospital emergency care, or PEC, is the primary journal for. And as Jose mentioned, we are really going to have a fantastic conference coming up in January. So what do we include in the conference? In addition to the standard conference content that we have in the main course, in the main conference, we also have a number of pre-conferences that have been fantastic additions to people's education. So specifically the NAEMSP Medical Director course. It's a 3-day educational course really on teaching you how to serve as an EMS Medical Director. We also have a Quality and Safety course, which is a 2-day pre-conference teaching you how to run quality improvement projects for an EMS system. And I'll highlight that that specific pre-conference is unique in that about 50% of the participants are not EMS medical directors, but they're actually EMS chiefs, assistant chiefs, QI, QA officers, so system administrators who are being taught the essence of how to do performance improvement for your EMS system. And so once again, this membership that we provide with regards to NAEMSP includes a subscription to PEC. It includes webinars that we offer and podcasts and in addition to all the other things that we've just described with regards to the journal itself with PEC. So what other educational contents are out there outside of our main conference? So for any EMS medical directors who are not able to come to the pre-conference, who may not have actually done an EMS fellowship, but feel they want to get kind of a crash course in EMS medical direction, NAEMSP rolled out this year a unique course called the Foundations of Medical Oversight that's effectively an abridged version of that 3-day medical director course. It's a 1-day, it can be done in person, it can be done hybrid, or it actually can be done entirely virtual. And so interestingly enough, what we've actually done is create some content for this course that's state specific. So there's actually a module in this course that's specific content for North Carolina EMS medical direction. It goes through the general, it talks about the rules associated with EMS medical direction here. It talks about EMS peer review, all the unique aspects of North Carolina EMS medical direction. And so in addition to getting the basic content of the NAEMSP medical director course, you're also getting some state-specific medical content provided. If there's any additional information you like, of course, go to our website or feel free to reach out to me as well. But once again, we really would love to see you guys attend more of our conference content. And then if you're interested in any of our specific educational content, either at the conference or once again, the Foundations course, please take advantage of it.
Thank you. Well, I hope you have found this informational. I know I have. I'm really excited about what the Highway Patrol is going to be doing. I think that will make a difference in our community. I will also tell you, I think it's still open. There is a scholarship program for professionals, for non-physicians to attend the National NAEMSP conference. It's a application process and then reviewed, and we've had several folks in North Carolina receive the scholarship, which includes travel and admission to the national conference and 1 year's membership to the program. I plan to do a follow-up email with both links to the presentations that you've seen today and contact information and anything out of the chat that I think will be helpful for you. We at the North Carolina chapter are considering doing quarterly grand rounds. So on a similar scale, we'd love to have you participate. We'll be putting out more information later. Thank you to my presenters today. If you have any follow-up questions, you have an email for this meeting that you can certainly use that email to ask. I'll stick around a little while as we close out if you want to add any questions to the chat proper. And with that, have a great day.